Hello all you medieval loving cosmonauts, as always I am Cosmic, and today we're going to be previewing of Kings and Men, which is described as a third-person multiplayer persistent medieval warfare game. The game is currently in early access and has been since August 2016. It is in development by a company called Donkey Crew and being published by Green Man Gaming. Now it is a game that is very similar in style to the Mount & Blade series, as you can already tell from the third person perspective and of course from the controls. The controls work from a manual system, so you hold the left mouse button down and then you move the mouse button to which way you want to swing your strike from, and then you release and it swings the strike from that direction. So first let me start by explaining what the game is supposed to be when it's all said and done. When the game finishes from its early access stint, it is supposed to be a multiplayer game that centers around medieval persistent warfare. That means that players will have their own factions, player-driven factions with a feudal hierarchy, with kings at the top and chivalric knights and players getting all kinds of different offices and that kind of thing. You're supposed to be running large player-built cities, commanding an NPC workforce to craft and trade and upgrade different things. Players will be able to fight as mercenaries for different factions. You'll be able to hold tournaments for prestige. All that kind of thing. It sounds very much like the promises that a certain MMO recently made that also went into early access. What was that game called that's just launched? Oh, that's right, Warhammer 40k The Eternal Crusade. Do you remember all the big promises that were made on that game? Well, all the big promises that were made on that game that people got burnt by have been made on this game also. And it's a little bit of a problem because the game launched in early access in 2016, in August of 2016, and is estimated to spend almost 2 years in early access from that point. 2 years in early access. That is a crazy amount of time to be selling a product that may or may not get finished. And don't get me wrong here. I'm certainly hope that this game gets finished. It is a game type that I love. I love the idea of medieval persistent warfare. Right up my alley. I will give you my money every day of the week for something like that. However, when you release something that is very little better than a tech demo currently, and that's basically what the game is at this standpoint, is a tech demo, and you're asking people to buy this game, to invest in this project that has barely gotten off the ground thus far. That's a little bit of a problem, and it's compounded by the fact that you have promised certain features at launch that have yet to be implemented, including the epic mode, which is essentially supposed to be the persistent part of the game. You don't have that mode. You click on that button, there's an option for it on the main menu, but you click it and a white screen appears and the game crashes every single time. So there's that. That's compounded by, obviously failures to deliver content. And then there have been several deadlines that have been missed by the developers. And it's overall, there's just a serious lack of content in this game. It's another early access disappointment in my mind, which I'm not surprised by, but it's sad that such a good idea can literally go so wrong. There's no way a developer, particularly an indie developer here, should be reaching for the stars with such an ambitious project and then slapping it in early access and saying, well, it'll be done in a couple of years. That's not good consumer business practice. That's not good faith. That is ridiculous. Does that mean that if the game goes completely dead and people stop buying it, the game's never going to get finished? It could well mean that. And frankly, I wouldn't be surprised. I really hope it doesn't happen. I really would like this game to get finished and polished and be a fantastic game. However, with the way things are looking at the moment, with the lack of content, with the combat that is clunky, the controls are clunky, you have a progression, you've got an RPG progression system in here. An RPG progression system in a skill-based multiplayer game. Now, you tell me how that is going to work well. Oh, let me think. It's not going to work well, because I'll tell you why. Because you have points that directly affect movement speed in this progression system, which meant that when I logged in as a new player and I got paired with people who have been playing the game for hours and hours, weeks and weeks and weeks, it means that I got absolutely destroyed instantly every single time. I'm talking about getting one-hitted, done. That was it. I had a mace, 0 armor because I had no gold to buy new weapons and armor. I have no skill points, and I have a wooden mace, and that's it, and a shield. And I was going into battle with fully armored knights with giant claymores who would literally headshot me, and I was down, and there was nothing I could do about it. I couldn't block in time because I didn't have the movement speed that they had. I had no damage because I didn't have the damage requirements that they had, and it was an ultimately abysmal execution of that whole idea. You can't have a skill-based system that is based on RPG mechanics when there's such blatant unbalance. It doesn't make any sense. The only way for that to happen, and the only way for if you want an RPG progression system in a game like this, then you have to have a system in place that scales players to the highest player. There's no other way to do it. Otherwise, it's completely unbalanced, and it's to the point that it's not even fair. I love a good underdog. Don't get me wrong. I don't mind unbalanced games in the sense that I don't mind taking down that guy who has max skills down a peg with my character that's not up to snuff. I have no problem with that because I like a challenge. However, when someone can one-shot me in the stomach and that's my game over, it's not a game anymore, it's just boring, and I'm just there as cannon fodder, and it's pointless. And it might sound like I'm really coming down negative on this game, but frankly, at this point, for what's there, it really does deserve it, because for me, the multiple red flags here, the lack of content, the lack of polish, the combat system that is clunky, the controls are really bad, the RPG progression system that just makes everything completely unfair, and then on top of that, missed deadlines, again, lack of content, and the idea that you're going to be spending 2 years in early access for a very ambitious game from a development team that is fairly unknown. They do have some people in that development team who've done things in the past, but even so, you don't have AAA money behind you. So again, I ask you, where is the flag that says, hey, this could turn out well? Because from every single project like this in the past, especially recently the Eternal Crusade, which again was Behaviour Interactive, and again promised the world, delivered absolutely next to nothing of what they promised. And for me, you can't ask players to buy into a project that may or may not succeed. And don't get me wrong, every time you buy an early access game or you kickstart something, there is that chance, and you make that chance upon purchase. However, from a consumer standpoint, if you are putting a game on early access, for me personally, it has to have more chance to succeed than it does to not. And at this point, looking at Of Kings and Men, I can certainly say that at this point, I would argue that all the red flags are there for this game to be abandoned. And, you know, I've seen it time and time again. There are definitely those early access games, for example, Darkest Dungeon, which came out in early access, and you could tell that was going to get finished. You could easily tell that that was a project that was going into early access for feedback and, you know, for financial reasons. And you could tell that the quality was there, the developers were behind it, it was constantly updated. You could tell that game was going to be finished in time. This, however, with a lofty 1.5 to 2 years of early access time, you have no idea if this is going to get finished. And frankly, from what I've seen so far, it has so much work to do that I would doubt that it would get finished within 2 years at this point. I think they've got little better than a tech demo currently. I think there are multiple problems with the gameplay that's in there, and never mind the fact that the majority of the gameplay promised for the game isn't even implemented yet. You have problems with your core combat thus far, and for me, it is something that people really need to stay away from. I can't stress that enough, and I know it sounds awful to say that, but from a consumer perspective, there's no reason why anyone should be purchasing this in early access. I wish the developers all the best, and I really hope that they turn this game around and they finish it and it becomes a really good product. But at this current time, there's enough red flags, even just looking at the Steam store page, looking at the description, looking at the early access tab of what the developers explain is going to happen. There's enough red flags in that information alone for me to easily say people need to wait until this is out. So it's not a good preview, I'm afraid, and it's sad. And I really wish it was different, because this game on paper sounds fantastic, but the execution is once again below par, and it's another early access disappointment that will probably, in all likelihood, become abandonmentware at some point within the next 1.5 to 2 years. And that is my preview of Kings and Men. Thank you so much for watching and listening. If you enjoyed the video, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. As always, hit the like button, make sure to share on your social media, and I will see you next time.